Hello everyone, my name is Michael. In today's video, we are going to see how we can create a simple crypto-powered online store using the MERN stack. And yeah, with that said, let's get straight into the video. So this is how our website will look like after we finish coding it. And as you'll see, I keep it very simple. So for the front end, we display our products, which we fetch from our database, our MongoDB database. And as you'll see, we have two products. We have a Bitcoin mag. So this is the title of the product, the description, the price in US dollars. Then we have a button to add it to cart. Now you can add this product to cart. Maybe you can add this as well. Or if you want, you can add more of it. So you can click it and add as many as you like. And as you see, we have our cart right here. And we can see which products we selected and how many of them. And then once we click checkout, generates a unique Bitcoin address. And what we say to the user is send payment to, and then this address. And then we say the total is in US dollars, what the Bitcoin amount should be when he sends the payment. Now, once the user sends the payment in Bitcoin and we receive it, and I'll explain how we do that in code in a bit, then automatically our database will be updated and the order will be marked as successful or as completed. And the platform that we will be using is BCON Global. And if you don't already know about them, I have made a video about them. So you can click up here. You'll be redirected to that video. And in this video, I'll go through it a bit faster, but in the video above, I explain how you can use BCON Global more in depth. But yeah, let's recap quickly what BCON Global is. So this platform allows us to accept crypto payments in our e-commerce platform. And what they basically do is you give them your XBAB key from your Bitcoin wallet, which we will see how we can get in a bit. Now, have in mind, not all Bitcoin wallets support XBAB. Now, when we give BCON Global the XBAB key, they are not able to, as you'll see right here, freeze our funds, charge fees, or anything else. They don't have access to your Bitcoin wallet. They can only generate one-time addresses, but when they generate those addresses are basically just for tracking the payments. They don't have any actual functionality on your funds. They cannot do anything with your funds. I guess the only thing they can do is monitor the transactions that happen from those one-time addresses, but that's fine with us. And the great thing about them is also that they only charge 1% fee for their service. And as we said above, they are not able to, as you see, charge fees directly on our wallet. So the how we pay them basically is using a balance. We add some balance on their platform and they charge us the fees through that balance for the service they provide. Make sure to use my link down in the description. And then once you sign up, you'll go to a page like this one right here. And first of all, what you want to do is go to platforms right here and then create a new store. So let's create our store and let's name it MERN. Let's add the tag again, MERN. And then here, as you see, it asks for your XBAB key. Now, one platform that supports XBAB wallets is blockchain.com. By the way, another thing that is great for BCON Global is they don't ask for KYC verification. And there we go. So after you sign up to blockchain, if you want to follow along, then what we want to do is go to our profile right here, I think. And yeah, and go to wallets and addresses. Then you want to go to Bitcoin. And then let's manage right here. And then you want to click legacy. And then and then click again manage right here and show xpub. Yeah, as you see right here, as it says right here, it says don't share your extended public key xpub with an untrusted source. Anyone with access to this key can keep track of your payments. But that's fine with us because that's exactly what we want to do, is track our payments. And yeah, let's put our Bitcoin wallet here. And then as you see, it says sample receiving address. So what we want to do now is close and then click add the next address and then give this address right here. Now HTTP callback URL is for the webhooks. So basically when the payment is successful, because it takes some time, we want BCON Global to ping our API and inform us about which payment, how much amount was paid, and yeah, any information about that order we created. So for now, we will leave it empty. And yeah, that's it. So you see, we have an API key, which we'll use in a bit. Now, another thing we want to see right here is test payments. And this is to test the payments webhook. Again, we will use it in a bit. So what we want to do now is go to the docs, go to API. And as you'll see on the API, we get some functionalities that are very useful. So first of all, we can check the balance of our wallet, the main wallet, of course, not the addresses we created. Then the next thing we can do is go to history and get all the transactions. Basically, this is mostly useful once you create an admin panel and you want to track the transaction history from BCON Global. But of course, we can track those payments directly from our database since we will be storing each transaction, each order. Then we have transaction details. Again, you can give it a transaction ID and then get that transaction details. But again, as I said, most of the transaction details will be saved on our database either way. This is mostly for debugging. And then we can get the stores, which is not that useful in our case. And this is what we want to go through. So as you see, using this API right here, we can create an address. So every time we ping this address with our authorization API key, which I showed you how we got, then we can generate a unique address, which is what we provide the user with. As you'll see right here, for each order, we use a different address. So we can pinpoint which payment was used for which order. And yeah, once we create that address, we basically save it on our database so we can again pinpoint which payment it was. Then we have the HTTP callback, and this is basically the webhook setup. Again, this can be whatever you want, the endpoint URL. In our case, we will basically use API, then orders, then webhook. And as you see, this is the information we get. We get the status, and we get basically numbers, which correspond to a status, either unconfirmed, partially confirmed, or confirmed. And in our case, we mostly want to listen to confirmed or unconfirmed. Then we get the address, and we use that to match it to an order. Then we get the value, how much was paid, because you see right here, we tell the user to pay this amount. But if they pay, for example, less than that, we want to mark it as partially paid and tell the user to pay again the remaining amount. So on your production website, you might want to be very clear that they have to pay this amount, not the amount showed right here, because Bitcoin fluctuates very fast. And then lastly, we have the cryptocurrencies list here, which is what the BCON Global site supports currently. So Bitcoin and BNB, we will be using Bitcoin, but you might want to use this if you want to support multiple cryptocurrencies. So you might want to have the user select which cryptocurrency they want to pay with. But since Bitcoin is mostly used, then we will do that for now. And then lastly, the another function we will be using is the rate to fiat currency. So basically when we ping this endpoint right here and we give it here on the currencies Bitcoin and then currency euro, as you will see, we get the price for one of the currency, for example, one Bitcoin, and then how much euro it corresponds with. And we use that to make the calculation how much Bitcoin we should charge. So actually, I haven't done this here, but you probably will want to have a timeout. For example, if the user doesn't pay within 1 hour, then the order is cancelled because of how frequent the Bitcoin fluctuates. And yeah, that's it. So let's start coding. So let's click new, create a new folder, and let's name it MERN store, MERN crypto store. By the way, I have the code down in the description. And there we go. So once you create your folder, make sure to open it in Visual Studio Code by opening command line on the folder and then do code space dot. And this will open that folder in Visual Studio Code. Now, if you don't use Visual Studio Code, that doesn't matter. Use whatever is easier for you to follow. Make sure you open that folder in your code editor. And what we want to do now is create a folder, and let's name it Backend. Here is where our Node.js API will be at, and of course with our Express and MongoDB database. By the way, we will be using MongoDB Atlas. Then what we want to do is open terminal and run this command to create a React app. So we'll say npx dash create React app, and then front end. Let's name it front end. There we go. So while this is happening, let's go ahead and create our MongoDB cluster in MongoDB Atlas. And in order to do that, I'll leave a link down in the description, or you can just search MongoDB Atlas. And then you want to open this and create an account, or use my link down in the description, whatever is easier for you. So after you sign up, this is the page that you will see. So let's click I accept and submit. And then it will ask you some questions. Just fill them out quickly. It doesn't really matter what you answer here. And there you go. So after you fill that up, this is where you want to be. Deploy your database. Now make sure you click M0. This is the free database, which gives you up to 512 megabytes. Now that might not seem a lot, but it is a lot in our use case. It will take a lot of orders to fill this up. But again, for a production, you probably want to use M10 or something like that. And there we go. So I'll leave this to default. We don't have to do anything there. And let's click create deployment. And there we go. So as you see, we get a database user. You can create a user yourself, but we will use the default one for now. So let's save this. So let's go on our Visual Studio Code and create a .env here. There we go. And our first value will be MongoDB underscore URI. And for now, let's comment out the username, the password for our user. And now what you want to do is click here to connect. Okay, so actually our user wasn't created. So let's go on database access here and create a database user. And let's type test and test for password as well. Let's keep it simple. Add user. One role. Okay, let's click add built-in role, and we want to make it on read and write to any database. There we go. Another thing that you might want to do is go to network access, and probably because your IP changes from time to time, this will not be sufficient. So you probably want to go here to add IP address, and then you want to allow access from anywhere. Now in production, you probably don't want to do that. So let's go back to our database now. Let's click connect. Then we will click, there you go, drivers. And then let's copy this URI right here and click close. So let's copy paste this here and let's replace the password here with our password. And that's it. Also, we want to save the API key for BCON Global. So let's do that as well. BCON Global API key. And let's go ahead and copy that. Let's find that first of all. So let's go to our platforms, MERN, and there we go. Let's copy that and paste it here. Perfect. And yeah, let's click proceed. Now the next thing we want to do is let's open a new terminal, go to Backend, and we want to create the package.js for our Node.js app. So let's do npm init-y. And then we want to install a few packages. First of all, we will install Express for our API. Then, of course, Mongoose for our database. And then we want to install Axios for making the request to the BCON Global API. And actually, we also want to install .env, so let's do that as well. Yeah, let's open a new one and let's click npmi.env. So now let's go back to our backend and let's create, first of all, the models folder where we will save our models for the database. We also want to create a folder for our routes, either the product routes where we fetch the products and show them in the front end on our React app, or of course the order endpoints for creating the orders. And then let's create a new file now and let's name it index.js and let's start coding. So first of all, we want to require .env and then config. That way we are able to use the values from our .env. Next, we want to require Express. We also want to use Mongoose. And next we will import our routes, but since they are not created as already, we'll skip that. And then we want to, of course, define our app and say, and then run Express. And then let's say app.use, and then express.json. So we are able to send and receive JSON data using our API. Next, we want to connect to our Mongoose database. So we'll do mongoose.connect. And then we want to pass the MongoDB URI from here. So let's say process.env and .mongodb URI. And once the connection is successful, of course, we want to comment this out so we know it connected successfully while testing this locally. And let's say connected to MongoDB. Otherwise, let's just console.log error and then log the error. Finally, to run the API, we want to say const port. Let's define the port and we will do for now 8080. But once you host this, you probably want to do this. So either we will get the port from our .env, which on production, usually the server you are hosting it at provides you with a port by default, or we want to use 8080. And then we want to say app.listen and listen to that port. And if successful, then we say server running on port 8080. So first of all, before we start with our routes, let's go ahead and create the models for our database. The first model will be, of course, the product. So let's go here and copy this. So we want to require Mongoose every time we create a model, and then define the schema. So product schema equals to, and then we want to create a new schema, and here we will define what that schema will have. So first of all, we will give the product a name, and the name should have type string, and it should be required every time we create a product. Let's copy this and also add a description. And of course, finally, we want to define the price for that product. And the price, of course, is a type of number. And again, it is required. And finally, we will do module.exports. And then we will say mongoose.model. We will define the model name. So let's say product. or basically the collection name actually. And then we define the schema here. That's it. Now let's copy this, go to models here and create a new file and name it order. And let's define what the schema for each order will look like. So of course, let's replace here product. And for each order, of course, we want to define which products the user has selected. So how we do that is we say products, then an array, then each product will have the product. And as you see right here, what we do is reference that product. So instead of saving each product information in our order, we just reference that product using the ID generated for each product right here. And then of course we will be saving quantity because a user can select as many of the same product as they like. Next, what we want to do is define the total, but we want to define the total in fiat money and also in Bitcoin. For each order, even if it is for it the same amount, of course the Bitcoin amount changes. Will be a number, and then again for total crypto will be a number as well. Also, we want to save how much crypto they paid in case they didn't pay the exact amount we requested. So we'll say paid crypto, and then the same thing. Then what we want to do is also save the status of the order, and that will be type string. By default, we want the type to be pending, and then we want to define the values that each should support. And here define an array of the possible values that can be used. Of course, pending can be used. Then we can use success, then failed, in case it failed for any reason. And then of course we want to say partially paid, in case they didn't pay the full amount. Finally, we want to save the transaction ID after we receive the information from the webhook, as I showed you before. And this transaction ID, of course, is the transaction ID on the blockchain, not the transaction ID of our order. And that will be in string format. And finally, we want to save the address that we create for each order. And we save that once we create the order before we receive the webhook. So when we receive the webhook with the address, then we can use the address to correspond the webhook event to the order on our database. Now let's go ahead and create our routes. So we will be using two routes. First of all, we will do product.js, and then of course order.js. Let's go on index.js, and let's require those two routes. So first of all, we'll say const product route equals to require routes, and then to product. And we do the same thing for the order. And then what we will do is say app.use. For the product route, we want to do /API and then /product. So when they want to ping one of the endpoints we create, and there we go. And of course, the same thing we do for the orders. So yeah, let's start coding our products now. The product router. So of course, we want to require Express. Then we want to require the product model, since we will use this schema model we created to create products or find products, etc. So let's say const product equals to, then we will require that schema or that model. And then finally, we will create the route from Express, router actually. And then finally on the end, we will do module.export exports equals router. So we want to export that router in order to use it here. And for simplicity, let's copy this, go to order and copy paste this as well here. And of course, let's replace this with order. There we go. And here's what routers we want to create. First router will be to fetch all the products. So this can be used on our front end to display the products. Then we probably want to also fetch a single product. We'll not be using this endpoint in our case, but for example, in production, what you want to do is when they click the product, you want to redirect to another page where you saw that individual product and maybe show more information than just the title in the description. But again, I want to keep it simple. So let's do that for now. Then we want to create an endpoint for updating a product. And of course, we also want to create one for creating a product. And finally, create an endpoint to delete a product. And what you want to do is for the updating and deleting a product, or actually for all of those here, you want to protect those routers, those endpoints, and make them authenticated. So for example, in order to ping one of those endpoints and create a product, and probably you want to add those endpoints to your admin panel, which you will have to create it, or you can just ping those using Postman or something like that. So what we will do now is go to terminal, new terminal, and if we run our backend, so let's go cd backend, then run it, it will create the database automatically once it connects to MongoDB Atlas and says, oh, right. So for password, we updated it. I forgot. We put the password test as well. So let's reload that. And there we go. So as you see, if we go back now to our database, as you see, the database is created and also the models for our database are created as well. So we have the orders and the products. And what you can do here is click insert document and here define the product details. Okay, so let's create those endpoints. So to fetch all the products, what we can do is say app or actually router. And then it will be a get request. And then we will say asynchronous, define backend request and response. There we go. And here what we will do is say const products. And then we want to fetch all products from the database. So we'll do await products and then dot find. And of course, if you don't provide any parameters here, it will just fetch all products, which is what we want in this case. And then of course say rest.json and send the products back as a response. Now let's copy this and say ID now in case we want to fetch a specific product based on the product ID. And of course here we will do product.find1. And of course let's rename this to product. And what we'll do is say underscore ID and then based on the request dot params.id. Now let's copy this again and we will create an endpoint to, as we see right here, create a product. So we'll do post and again slash. And here we want to get the product details. So for example, from the body, so we'll say name, description, and price. And we destructure that from requested body. And then we say const product equals to new product. And then we define those here. So actually, I'll just copy this. And then we say const new product equals to, and then product dot save. And then of course we want to send back the data to that request. So we'll say status or actually JSON. And then we send the new product. And basically new product will contain the information for the product plus the ID. Now another endpoint we want to create is the updating product and delete a product. So let's copy this. Let's define this to put. We want to fetch the product first of all. So let's say, again, find one here. And actually we want to do ID here. There we go. And let's do that. So the same thing as when we get the product. But this time what we want to do is say if name is not null. So if name is defined, then of course we want to update the name. So we'll say product dot name equals to the updated value we get from the body. So let's copy this and do this for all the values. So description and the price. And then what we want to do is say const updated product and then say await product dot save. And there we go. So let's go ahead and test those. So how we'll do that is using Postman. So let's go here to our Postman and let's click to create a new HTTP request. And of course, the first thing we want to do is create a product since we don't have any products. So what we will do here is say HTTP and then localhost 8080, since this is the endpoint or the URL basically for our API. And of course, we do /API/product, and then slash. Of course, we change the to a post request, and we go here to the body. We click here to raw, and of course, go to JSON here. And the first value we want to do is we want to add is say name, then Bitcoin mag, for example. And let's copy this, and then add the description. And then let's say Bitcoin mag description. And of course, lastly, we want to add the price. And this is a number, so let's say 59.99 and click send. Actually, we have to restart our backend. There we go, since it failed. So let's try again. Perfect. As you'll see, if we go on our database and refresh, there we go. So as you see, the product was created. Now let's go ahead and create one more. And let's say Bitcoin t-shirt. And of course, let's copy this. There we go. And put 19.99. Click send. And of course, again, if we refresh, there we go. We have our two products. Okay, now before we continue with the order route, let's go ahead and go to our front end and implement the fetching of the products, showing the products, adding them to cart, and then we'll come back and create the order endpoints in order to create the order. And yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So let's open terminal. Of course, run our backend and then create a new terminal here and go to our front end and click and run npm start to run our React.js code. There we go. So let's go back in our VS Code. Let's go to CRC and to app.js. Actually, first of all, let's create a component. Let's name it product or products.js. Let's of course import to React. We'll also use the use state, use effect. There we go. And then from React. We also want to import Axios, which is something we have to install. And then let's say const products. And then here we are going to pass later on a function which will be called on add cart. And basically we run this function every time the user clicks add to cart for that specific product. And of course we want to create a state to save the products we fetch using Axios. Then set products equals to use state. That's an array. Then before we continue coding, we have to go to here to package the JSON. Scroll down, and here we want to add proxy, and we want to add the backend URL. So HTTP localhost 8080. So it knows which endpoint to hit to make the API request on the Axios.get request, for example. So I'll show you right now. So if we do use effect, So every time we load this, we want to fetch the products. So let's define a function now because we want this to be asynchronous. So fetch products equals to, and then asynchronous, like so. Then we do const, and then the data we get from that access request equals to, and of course we do access.get, and then the endpoint we created. So /API /products. And again, slash, or you can do it like that. It's the same thing. You say set products and then data. And of course, we want to call that function created. So as you'll see, we didn't define here HTTP localhost 8080. Instead, we did it here. But for production, of course, you need to define the backend URL here. Now we want to return. And here we will write the HTML. So of course, we want to create a div. And let's create a title and call it products. Then we want to create another div which will surround those products, and we want to say style. Go like that, and let's say display flex first of all, because we want to show the product next to each other one by one. We also want to say flex direction to a row, and then flex wrap. And now finally what we can do now is use here the brackets. So we can write some JavaScript, and then we can say products, and then for each product dot map, for each product we want to return some HTML. For each product we want to create a div. Let's pass that div a key, so product, and then we'll use the ID of that product as the key. And then we also want to pass some styling for each product, and the styling has margin, so we want to add some spacing of 1 rem. Then we will add a border, solid, let's say gray. And then we want to add some padding as well, and we want that to be 1 rem as well. And here, first of all, let's create an h3 and pass here the product name or title basically. Let's copy this, and the next one will be a paragraph, and let's pass product description. Then we want to pass the price like so, and finally we want to add a button to add that product to the cart. So let's say button on click, and of course on click we want to say on add cart, and then here we'll pass the product, and we will do certain things with that product, but for now let's leave it as it is, and give it that button a name, so add to cart. We have to go to app.js, of course. Let's remove the old code. Let's import React again. We will use the useState, since here is where we will define the cart, or basically the cart state, where we will save the products added to that cart. Let's say from React. We'll also, of course, add the products component. And then we'll say const app, and let's define the cart state, which will be, of course, an array of the products. Then let's say on add to cart. This will be the function that we will pass afterwards as a prop to products. And of course here we want to say product, which we will add, so product to add. Then we want to say if product is already in the cart, because if they add it to cart and then click it again, we just want to increase the quantity. So first of all, we want to check if they are doing that. So if product already in cart, then we want to find that product. We want to match it based on the ID. So product underscore ID equals to product to add underscore ID. Then we will say if it is already in the cart, then we want to update the cart state. So we'll do const updated cart equals to. Then we want to map each cart until we find the product. So let's say cart.map, then for each product, and say product if product dot underscore ID equals to product to add underscore ID. Then we want to update that state. And how we do that is we pass the product as it was, but we will also want to pass the quantity. And the quantity, of course, will be product.quantity plus 1. Otherwise, like so, we just return the product as it was. And of course, we update the cart using the updated cart data. Otherwise, if it is the first time we adding this product to cart, it's very simple. We just say set cart, we pass the old cart state, and then we add the new product data plus the quantity by default to 1. And that's it. So now what we will do here is say return. And of course, we want to return a div. And inside of here, return the products. And of course, pass the onAdd cart proc. And then we will say export, default, and then add. Okay, so we have to also do here export, default, and then products. There we go, but we also have to resolve Axios. So let's open a new terminal, go to Frontend, and let's say npmi Axios save. 404 not found. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So we did /API/products when it is product. Oh, there we go. Yeah. We had to do a wait here. And there we go. It worked. So you see products, and there is our products. Let's go back to Postman. Let's create a new product actually. Yeah, we created, let's have 2 products list. So let's restart. There we go. We have 2 products here. And also on-site click add to cart. Now the state of the cart is updated, but of course we haven't added some code to display the cart details. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go here and create a new component now, call it cart. Of course, in production, you probably want to use multiple pages. So a cart page, a products page. But for now, we're keeping it very simple. And we only want to use the use state. And of course, cart has to get the cart prop, which basically this is the array of the products added to cart. And then what we want to do here is say return a div. Of course, we add some title, cart. There we go. And then what we want to do is again do cart.map and then display each product we added. So cart.map and then say product. We also want to get the index. And then we want to say div. And then we want to display the following information. First of all, we want to add the key here. And of course, this will be the index. And then we will add a span and display the product name and also the product quantity, as you see right here. So let's do export, default, and then cart. Let's go back to app.js, import it here. And right below products, throw it here. And of course, we want to pass the cart use state. There we go. And that should be it. So let's go back. And there we go. So as you'll see, we added to cart Bitcoin mag, one of them. So it shows it here. But if we click again, 2 mags, 3 mags, and so on. And if we add another product, as you'll see, it goes right below. And of course, we can increase the quantity. Now, finally, we want to add the order functionality. Now, before we do anything here on the front end, let's go back and let's go to the orders route. There we go. And now for orders, we want to add 2 main endpoints. One of them will be the create order, and another one will be for the webhooks. And of course, like products, you want to fetch the orders. So we'll say fetch orders. Maybe you want to fetch an individual order, so you will also do fetch order. Let's just copy this since it's pretty easy. And of course, replace product here with order. Same here. Again, you want those endpoints to be protected. You don't want anyone to ping that endpoint and fetch the orders. So yeah, let's start by creating the order route for creating an order. So let's say router dot post. Of course, will be a slash again. Let's copy this part from here. There we go. First of all, let's fetch the API key for BCON Global from our .env. So let's say const API underscore key equals to process.env dot. And you also want to define the API URL for BCON Global. And if we go back to BCON Global documentation, as you'll see, this is the main API URL, external-api.beacon.global/api/version1. So let's copy that, go back and copy paste it here. Next, we want to create an Axios agent. So first of all, let's define Axios. Now I'll explain what the Axios agent is about. So let's say const beacon API, and then we will do axios.create. So this creates an Axios agent. Then we define the base URL with the API URL. And then on headers, if we go back on the documentation, as you'll see right here, it requires to pass authorization. Basically, what we are passing here is the API key. And of course, content type, since we will be sending JSON and receiving JSON, we want that to be application/JSON. Now, what happens here with the Axios agent, every time we say beacon API, and then for example, .get or .post adds this by default, and then anything else I add, for example, here on the endpoint, for example, let's say I go to accounts, since I want to create an account, then it sends a request with this by default and then adds this on the end of this API URL. And of course, I don't have to define here the headers each time I make a request. We are using these headers by default for each request, since each request requires authentication. Okay, so here is what we want to do when we create an order. First of all, we want to create an address, a one-time address. So if we go back on the documentation and go to address here, new address, as you will see, what it says we must do is send a post request to /address. And that's basically it. By default, it will send us either the Bitcoin address or the BNB based on what XBAB we used. And let's say const wallet response equals to, and then await beacon API dot post, then /address. Then we want to make sure that the request is successful, so we'll do our wallet.response.data.status, and we say if it doesn't equal to OK, because as you see right here, if it is successful, it returns status to OK. Then we just want to return that our message and say failed to generate beacon address. But if it is successful, then we want to get that beacon address, and we get that from wallet response.data again, and then .address. As you see right here, yeah, we have to get data and then address. What we want to do next is say const and then get the product entries, which we will get from the body. So let's say request.body.products. Then for each product, we want to get the product IDs. So what we want to do actually is say const product IDs, then say product entries dot map, and then for each product or for each entry basically get the product ID like so. Then we want to get all of those products from the database. So we'll say const products equals to, and then say await product dot find, and then find them based on the ID. So we want to say product, or actually we have to import product as well here from the models. So let's say product. And then we want to make sure that as the filter, so we want to say in, we want the ID to be in product IDs. Lastly, we want to make sure that the products are valid and that they exist in our database. So what we want to do is say is valid order and basically say products entries. And then for each product, we want to make sure that the products from our database contain the product ID from the product entries. And of course that the entry quantity is bigger than 0. Then we want to say if is valid order is not valid actually, then we want to return this message and say invalid product ID or quantity. Finally, we want to get the total for that order. And in order to do that, what we can do is say const total fiat. And then we say product entries. Then for each product, we want to find the product on the database using the product ID. And then we want to add that product price and then multiply it by the quantity we selected. Now, next, what we want to do is get the current price for Bitcoin. And then to do that, as you'll see if we scroll up, we have this ability here, rate to fiat currency. So we want to ping this API now. As you'll see, we'll define the crypto name and the currency we are using. Then we will get the current Bitcoin price for that currency. So to do that, what we can do is say const crypto response equals to, and then say await BCON API dot get, and then of course currencies slash Bitcoin. And then for currency, let's use USD. And again, same with the wallet response. We want to return a message if it is not successful. So we will say failed to get cryptocurrency rate. Otherwise, we get the rate. And how we do that is say crypto response, data, the data again, and then the price. And then to calculate the crypto, we get the total fiat. Actually, say const total crypto equals to total fiat. And then we divide that by the current rate. And then we create the order. How we do that is say const order equals to new order. We want first of all to define the products. And basically, as you see, we have to define the product and the quantity. So how we do that is say products entries dot map. For each entry, we return the product based on we're using the ID, product ID, then the quantity we selected. Next, we want to pass the total fiat, the total crypto, and the Bitcoin address we created. Finally, we want to create that order. So let's say new order equals to order.save. And of course, do that asynchronous. And then send that data. And that's it. So let's go ahead and test this. So let's go back to React, actually implement this to React. Let's go to cart. Now we want to add the button right here. And when that button is clicked, we want to create a function which will handle the checkout, because basically this will be a checkout button. So let's name it checkout. And here's how we handle the checkout. Let's create a function. Of course, this is asynchronous. Now, before we do anything here, let's define some states that we need. And of course, what we need to get from the order that we return is the address that the user has to send the Bitcoin amount to, and of course, the Bitcoin amount and the amount in dollars. So let's define those states. There we go. Address, total fiat, total crypto. And let's first of all import Axios and then say const products, because basically, first of all, we need to send the products we want to purchase for that order. So say products equals to cart. And then for each product, we want to return the product ID and the quantity. So then we say const, we want to get the data from the request we will do and say await axios.post. And of course, post this to /API/orders. And then we want to pass the products here. Once we create the order and we return the order data, what we get from that order is the address. So do set address data.address, and of course the total fiat and total crypto. What we want to do now is go down here, and then once we know we have an address, we want to display the where to send that payment and how much to send. So we will create a div and then pass a paragraph and say send payment to, and then pass the address that we got from our request when we created the order, and of course pass the total, and then we define dollar and then total fiat to fixed 2, and then or we say total crypto to fixed 8, and then Bitcoin. So yeah, let's go ahead and test this out. So let's go back to our React app, let's refresh, and let's add some products again and click checkout. Paid crypto is required. Okay, that's a mistake. Let's go back on our models. And paid crypto is actually only available on the webhook once we get a response from BCON Global. So let's change that to false and restart our backend. And let's run this again, add some products, click checkout. And there we go, as you'll see, the total is 139.98. And on Bitcoin, this is the correct amount. So there we go. Now that we know we can create an order, and actually if we go on our database and validate that, let's go on orders. As you see, yeah, the order is created, and we also get the products here. Total fiat, total crypto, status by default is pending, and the address. So now let's start by coding our webhook. So before we code, actually, let's go back on our documentation. Let's scroll up, and let's go to HTTP callback. Every time we have a payment and the user makes the payment to that address, we will receive from the webhook the status, the address, the value, how much the user paid in Bitcoin, and the transaction ID in blockchain. By the way, I must mention that the value here is in Satoshi, so we'll have to convert that to Bitcoin. I'll show you in a bit how we'll do that. It's very simple. And another thing we have to do here is validate that the secret that the BCON Global sends us is equal to the API key. So yeah, let's start coding. So let's do router.get and let's say /webhook. And then what we get from the webhook, we get the status, we get the address, we get the value in a string. We want to convert that into a number, and we get the transaction ID and the secret. Now the first thing we want to do is validate secret equals to the BCON Global API key. But if it doesn't equal to that, then we should block access to our webhook endpoint. Okay, next we want to convert the value, first of all, to a number, and then from Satoshi to Bitcoin. So how we do that is very simple. We say const value in Bitcoin equals to, and then we say parse int the string value up to 10 figures, and then we divide that by 10 million. Okay, next what we want to do is find the order. Again, as I said in the beginning, we find the order based on the address, since it's a one-time address. So we say const order equals to await order.find1. Then here we pass the address. And then if no order found, of course, we want to return a 404. Actually, it doesn't really matter what you return here because it's not you or the user that receives this message. So you might as well just return here. But let's leave it to that now. And then, as you'll see, let's go back on the documentation. We get three types of statuses. It's either 2, 1, or 0. So first of all, we want to check if the status is confirmed. So let's go back and let's say if status equals to 2, which means it's confirmed. Then we want to update the order status. And then what we will do is a validation for if we got the same amount of Bitcoin here as we asked the user to pay us. We define the order.status and say value in Bitcoin. If it is bigger or equal to order.total crypto, then we want to define the status to success. Otherwise, we want to say partially paid. Then what we can do is say order.transaction ID, since we want to save the transaction ID on the blockchain. And finally, we also want to save how much the user actually paid us, in case they paid us less or more. So say order.paid crypto, and then we define the value in Bitcoin. And then we say await order.save. What we want to do, say else if status equals to 1, we want to mark the order status as failed and then save it. And actually, let's also save that. And then finally, you want to return and then say res.send status to 200. You must always return a status here on the webhook. Otherwise, BCON Global, usually any webhook service will try to retrieve the request if it doesn't receive any status. And in that case, you might have duplicate orders or something like that. You don't want that to happen. So always return a status unless your webhook endpoint is actually down. And that's it. Now, how do we test that? Now, we could actually test that using a real payment. So, for example, I can actually send a payment to this address and send that Bitcoin. But actually, that will be expensive. We don't want to test with actual Bitcoin. And a great thing that BCON Global has is the ability to test your webhooks for free. So once we go on our dashboard and go to test payments, we can go here to select store, select our store, select the crypto amount. So let's copy this and paste it here. The crypto address, copy that as well. And we can send a status that we want to send. So let's say, for example, confirmed. Now let's step back a bit. We haven't defined the callback URL. So let's open dashboard here. Let's go to platforms. Let's go to our store. And as you will see, this expects a URL. But of course, in our case, since this is hosted locally currently, we cannot give it the localhost 8080. This is only accessed locally for us. Now there is an easy way to make your local endpoint public, and that's by using a service called ngrok. Do ngrok, and then download. Click here to download. And then based on your platform, I have Windows, so do choco install ngrok or just download it. And once you download it, what you'll be able to do is go back on your terminal. Of course, restart your terminal after you install it. And what you can do is run ngrok http and then the endpoint port you have created. For example, our port is 8080 for our backend, so I'll put 8080. And as you'll see, it gives us a public URL that forwards any request on our localhost API. So what we can do now is copy this. By the way, once you install ngrok, you have to authenticate and also create an account on ngrok.com. If you have already watched my previous video on BCON Global, Then I show that step by step on how to do that. So if you want to do so, click on the video somewhere up here and go to that step to see how we do that. But for now, let's do it a bit quickly. So let's go back here. Let's put our callback URL, but also we want to say /API/orders and /webhook. So let's click Save Changes. There we go. And now if you click Send Test Payment, let's increase this. As you will see in a bit, there we go. We received the request. Click and refresh our orders. As you will see, okay, actually, it didn't work. Okay, when you test the payments, we do not receive the secret, as you see right here. So we will comment this out in our case. So let's restart our backend again. Let's repeat the steps one more time. And hopefully this time, there we go, we got status, okay. So let's test our database. And we should have a success on our order status. There we go. Actually, it says partially paid. So right here, we don't divide by 100 million, we divide by 10 million. Okay, that was the mistake all along. Okay, so let's restart. Send the request again. We'll just copy this. It's the same thing and run it. And hopefully this time, let's refresh. Oh no, let's go on the second page. And there we go. Finally, we got status success. So yeah, that's it for this video. Let me know down in the comments what you like to see next, what kind of project you would like to see next. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any of my future videos. Goodbye.